Welcome into Bird's Eye View. I'm Jay Walker. Welcome to Monday. Hope your weekend was great. And on the show this afternoon, we're going to talk to a guy who had a great weekend because the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns opened up conference play with a 3-game sweep over a team that I felt was going to be one of the favorites in the league this year in the Troy Trojans. But the Cajuns get the 3-game sweep. Head coach Tony Robichaux is our guest this afternoon. Cajuns have now won 6 in a row, including 2 wins over Alabama, midweek win over Northwestern State, now a sweep of a pretty good team over the weekend. You know, I'm out of town, and I'm trying to keep up with what you guys are doing, and all I know is this. At one point in time, you trailed in all 3 games. At one point in time, you came back to win all 3 games, and your bullpen was absolutely filthy over the weekend. Yeah,
you know, you've got to learn to win in a lot of different ways. There's many different ways to win, and at the end of the day, you want to learn to win in different ways because you don't want to be a club that only can win, you know, if you're ahead or those kind of things. And so we did very well. I'm very proud of our guys, especially these young arms. You know, they're starting to grow up a little bit and pitch with some intent. And that's important. A young team that doesn't panic a whole lot, which is good when they get behind early. And a pitching staff that's working to stay away from the 3-run inning. When you can do that, you got a chance to win a ball game.
You know, the one of the things that I think impressed me, and I know had to have made you happy over the weekend, is in 2 of the 3 games, you gave up a crooked number in the top of the first inning. No panic in this team. No OG, no feeling sorry for yourself. Let's just go back and go to work. And, you know, even on Friday, you know, you got a couple of those runs back right away. You were able to answer back. And I understand you don't have freshmen in your 1 through 9. I get that part of it, but you still have only got a few guys who have played what I would call a ton of games at the collegiate level, and that had to make you really happy.
Well, it did, you know, because you can preach so much in the fall and you can preach a philosophy, but until that philosophy gets challenged, you don't know if it's going to fracture or, you know, if somebody's going to crack it or not. And so we preach all the time, you know, don't pay attention to the scoreboard, just play the game. Don't worry about the score, worry about the game, ignore your opponent and compete against the game. And that's what I think this team's done a good job of, is ignoring their opponent, understanding that their biggest opponent is them, not who's in the dugout over there, and understanding that they've got to ignore the person that's in the dugout and compete against the game. And so that's what they've been able to do a good job of ever since we left UTSA.
Your team, you know, there's been, I think, a whole lot made over the fact that at times you've kicked a ball or 2 here and there. When your pitching staff goes out, gets as many strikeouts as they did over the weekend, it takes a heck of a lot of burden off that defense.
Well, it does. You know, there's pitching, there's defense, and there's timely hitting. And, you know, you hope that you can get very good in all 3. And when you do, you end up with a special team like we had last year that could do all 3. Very rarely do teams do all 3. And what you want to try to do is get good as you can in all 3. And again, I think we'll continue to get better defensively. The more we just kind of settle down, the more we'll play. And, you know, I don't want to make a big deal over anything as much as we don't want to spook or you know, start hollering at a young team because you can get them to crack or start worrying about something too much versus just, you know, ignoring their opponent and playing against the game. So we've been able to, every weakness that we've had, we've been able to go work on it in a systematic approach to where we're not hollering and screaming at them so that they'll stay calm being so young.
You had told me a week ago that, you know, you were looking for some consistency out of your corner outfielders. And it's interesting because you're still giving all of them an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And it seems like whichever guy you call upon on a given night is coming out and getting some things done. You know, Brian Mills got a couple of things done this weekend. Butler had a huge lick for you on Saturday. And, you know, Kyle Clement had a couple of hits. I mean, your corner guys, and while you haven't had anybody step up and say, okay, I'm your everyday left fielder and I'm your everyday right fielder, they've all making a little bit of a contribution here and there. And the one thing that maybe surprises me about your team so far this season offensively is that you've got some depth, and you've got more depth than I thought you were going to have.
it's not bad. It's growing. You know, we're growing from the bottom up. We're doing it with the young arms too, is growing them from the bottom up. And you are correct. Our ultimate, I think, down the stretch lineup is we'd like to bring Joe into third, DH is Shug, and then open up 3 more outfield spots. So that's why we're playing a bunch of outfielders right now, trying to see if we can get that matchup to work for us and get Joe at third and get Shug as the DH to keep that knee as healthy as we can throughout the year, get a little bit more range at third base, take a little pressure off of BT, and then open up 3 openings in the outfield. So that's why it's important that Butler comes on, and we're good that Derek Harrington played well. We're continuing. We're going to play Jam Williams in the middle of the week. We're going to try to give Adam Angel a start if we can get to these games in the middle of the week. That's why midweek games are important when you developing, because it gives more people a chance to pitch, more people a chance to play when you're in the situation that we're in right now. We're trying to grow from the bottom up.
Jam Williams is an interesting guy because you told me before the season started the guy's got some really, really good tools. And in the game on Tuesday night, I think we saw the good and the bad. You know, he went out, he gets on base, he steals second, he steals third, and then later on he steals second, and then fails to read what was an obvious base hit, went back to the bag, and it wound up, you wound up doing okay that inning, but he wound up at third base, and he became erased on a home to first double play that if he reads the ball properly, probably scores a run. So he's still learning. And at the same time, I think he's already become a fan favorite because all I got to do is watch him run. And I think even a fan that's not real smart knows fast when they see it.
Well, it's funny when we're taking BP, a lot of the opposing coaches in first base dugout ask us, who the heck is that? Guy looks like a big leaguer, in a college uniform, but he's a football player playing baseball, and we're trying to continue to mold him. We took him in as a piece of clay, as a project, so we're not going to get disappointed with him. Our biggest goal is we understand that when we play him in the middle of the week that he's going to, he might freeze at third base. He might freeze on a read that a lot of baseball players are familiar with. But we think down the road, especially if we can cut down strikeouts and he can put the ball and play on the ground and play fast with some havoc, he's going to create some issues. And that's why we said at the beginning of the year, sometimes this is not going to be pretty. I mean, yesterday we had some base running mistakes that weren't pretty. It's going to happen. We have, then you go to the other side where, Davis tried to go first to third on a sac bunt, where now the older guys have tried to push the throttle too fast. So now it's a delicate balance. We're trying to throttle down some people and throttle up some people. And once we get to that happy medium, I think we're going to be fine.
You had a couple of guys had pretty good weekends, none of them better than Blake Trahan. I want to say for the week he was 8 out of 13, and 7 of his 8 hits were for extra bases, and he just scalded the ball all week long. I'm not going to say just the weekend because he had a very good night on Tuesday against Northwestern State as well, and he's got his batting average up to 400 now, and he's playing like an All-American.
Well, the thing that I like about it the most is, the guy had 12 doubles last year. I think he's got 9 already, and 3 of the doubles this weekend were hustle doubles. They shouldn't have been doubles, but he took the extra base on them. And, man, when your best player is your best hustler and, Bible studies in the front row of Bible study, that's a coach's dream. Coaches around the country know this. They've had a lot of great players, but with all that talent, sometimes it doesn't become the best person on the team. And here's a great opportunity. You got a guy that's a hustler. He's not only one of the better players on the team, but he's also one of the best people that you can be around. So he's one of those people that a coach every once in a while gets, and you'll say to your wife at now, he's a joy to coach.
Ragin Cajun baseball coach Tony Robichaux, our guest this afternoon on Bird's Eye View. Tell me about this Troy club. You had a chance to see him now. Tell me what you thought about it.
Well, when they came in, our scouting report was that the first 4 guys are good, that you got to manage the bottom of the lineup. At one time, I think the bottom of their lineup on Sunday was like 2 for 19. So the one thing we did a good job of is we managed the bottom, and then we were able to kind of, play with the top. They never could really drive in a bunch of runs. And I thought we did a good job there. And then we just got stingy as the game wore on, out of the bullpen. And that was a nice thing, because with such a young staff, you don't know what the back end of the game. You look at all the UTSA games, we win game 2, but game 1 and game 3 are winnable. It's just they got away from the fifth on us with the young arms. But that's why it was so important to send those guys back out there, because now what's happened is they've got stingy from the fifth on. So I think that really helped us. And, I don't know. I thought, they were going to be better. But we also pitched very good and didn't give the top of the order a chance to do a lot of damage.
You also got to their 2 best relievers, McGowan, and then, you had that guy that was freshman of the year last year, and you treated him pretty rudely too. And McGowan took 2 of the losses. These are guys that were bullpen stalwarts for Bobby a year ago. And you were able to go out and you were able to handle both of those guys. Maybe, and again, I'm not there. I'm just watching it from afar. I'm looking at stats. That to me might have been the most impressive thing of the whole weekend is, they've got 2 guys who can shut you down out of the bullpen, and you got to both of them.
Well, we did. And, I think what's good about this team too is we're just a no-star team, and I really like that, to where it's a collective group to try to win. I know everybody knows about BT because he's an All-American shortstop, played for Team USA, but I don't know if many people can write down who's coming out of our pen or who our 3 starters are. We a no-star team, and they play well together. We saw good leadership in the fall and team chemistry. So again, man, team chemistry can make a good team great or a great team good. And last year's team was full of stars. You needed 2 sheets of paper to write down all the go-to guys and the guys that were going to get drafted and all of this. This year, I don't know if people can name all 9 of our players. So that's kind of good for us and good for teams that are coming in, because I don't think they know what to expect, if you will. I don't know if he anticipated, when they got to one of our freshman starters early, going, okay, I feel pretty good now. And then all of a sudden, you're running a bullpen in there that struck, I think, 49 people out this week, that I think had to catch him a little bit by surprise, But I think collectively we just played well since coming out of Alabama. I think they saw after game 1 in Alabama that they weren't that far off from being a good baseball team. It was just how they were playing, not their ability. And I think that's what really kicked in gear after the Friday night game in Alabama, in my opinion.
You said before the season started, leading me to believe that you kind of have an idea about what this game is. But no, you told me before the season started, you said, I don't know that our starters that we're going to ask them to go out and throw 8 innings,
right?
That you would probably piece it together a little bit more than you have in the past, because you didn't have an Austin, you didn't have a Baronic, you didn't have a Booty.
Yep.
Well, your starters basically gave you 5 innings over the weekend. And then I look, Lee, Moore, Bacon, Marks, those guys were all lights out. Troy had a team batting average of about 110 against your bullpen over the weekend.
Yeah. Well, we after watching this fall, because let me tell you something. You've been in this game long enough, calling way more than just baseball. Freshmen can Dr. Jekyll and Hyde you. One night you can go, man, I think I know what I got. And then 2 nights later, you can go, wow, that's not even the same guy. So there's a lot of up and down with youngness. Whereas when you get into these older guys, you kind of know what you're going to get every night out. And so the one thing we did see coming out of the fall is that we had some funk coming out of the pen, with underneath, Moore's a little herky-jerky. We had some kind of untraditional arms coming out. And that creates a little havoc on hitters' eyes, especially after facing a traditional guy for 5 innings. And I think our starters eventually get through the 5th and bust through that barrier. We're not asking them to right now, because that's one of the toughest things for starters to do, especially as freshmen. But what I've liked about it so far is that anytime we haven't pitched well, the hitters answered back early, and then the bullpen came in and changed the momentum back to us. And that's a good sign. Demo comes in the other night, bases juice, their best guy. We circled him on the lineup card, and here it is, buddy. There's 2 outs of bases juice, their best guy. Here's the ball, go get him. And he struck him out and left him standing there looking, as a true freshman. So, I mean, that's just a great sign.
You always come across about the same. Okay. Win, lose, not, happy, sad. The only way that I know that you're upset is when we talk post game and I say blah, blah, blah. And you don't say thanks, Jay. You say, okay, Jay. And when you say, okay, Jay, I know you're not happy. You must have been jumping up and down in the dugout when the kid got the punch out. You had to have been.
I mean, he fired our whole dugout up. I mean, it was an emotional moment, and to watch that development. You hope and expect to see development as they get into late freshman, early sophomore years. But when you start to see somebody take 25 to 30 hours of teaching pitching in the fall and start to bring it in mid-February and early March, that's a good sign. It's good aptitude by the freshmen, because a lot of times guys take a good while to pick up a system, but these freshmen have really done a good job. They're cerebral. I mean, they learners. They watch in the dugout, and when you talk to them, they know what's going on. And we had a cross checker come up the other day after Saturday's game and say, what do y'all do here for pitching? I mean, I guess he saw so many strikeouts, and I said nothing. We just try to learn the game and, learn what the hitters are doing on every pitch. And so it's a good sign that the freshmen have picked that up, and, hopefully they'll just continue to internalize the system and, keep getting better at handling the system.
How surprised are you that these guys have had as much success as they have, given the fact that you got a new baseball this year and it's supposed to add more offense to the game? And I think your pitching staff's given up, maybe 10 home runs on the year. You're going to give up more than you gave a year ago. You're probably not going to hit as many, but at the same time, you're holding opponents to about a 220 batting average. Are you surprised about that, considering the new baseball and what you thought might happen with it?
Well, again, I'm really proud of them because they were under so much change. I mean, you lost 500 innings pitched. You lost 6 out of the 9 hitters in the lineup. You lost the hitting coach, the third base coach. You lost the first base coach. Then we gave a bunch of freshmen a new baseball. So there was a lot of change for them to deal with, but I think that's a credit to them on how much their learning curve has sped up, through all this. And our big goal when we handed them the ball, we actually used Matt's kind of theory with the ball, like he did with the bat 2.5 years ago. Stop thinking that the bat's bad. If you think the bat's bad, it's going to be bad. His mentality with his hitters 2.5 years ago were, if you can hit, you can hit. It doesn't matter what you swing with. And so he took that out of their vocabulary. They couldn't talk about how bad the bat was. And of course, we were bigger, we were physical, we were stronger, so you could kind of mix that in there too. And then we led the country in offense for 2 years, We did the same thing with the ball. We told them that we don't want to hear you talk about it. We're not going to alibi. Here's the baseball. Go pitch with it.
If you can pitch, you can pitch.
Yeah. And don't blame stuff on the ball. And we just took it out from day one, and we actually did a lot of other stuff with them too in inter squads. We mixed the balls. We'd put the new ball, we'd put the diamond, the old ball, we'd put the old NCAA ball, and we mixed them up, made them throw bullpens with them and pitch with different balls so that they could kind of get comfortable at being uncomfortable and not worry so much about the ball. Just get a ball out of the bag and go get the guy out. I mean, don't come tell me how high the seams are. And so we kind of took that away from them from day one, and they've done a good job of handling that ball change.
Tony Robichaux is our guest here on Bird's Eye View. And, of course, Tony's regular radio show will premiere next week, 6:30 at Walk-On's Bistro and Bar. But happy to have him here this afternoon. We'll do this break and come back more with the coach after this on ESPN 1420 and .com.
Prizes. It's all free at ESPN1420.com.
ESPN1420 and .com. Ragin Cajun head coach Tony Robichaux, my guest this afternoon on Bird's Eye View. Cajuns have won 6 straight. And they've got a busy week coming up. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. You know, I was curious before the season started, and Bab and I talked about this. I don't remember if you and I did or not, but I know Coach Bab and I talked about it as to how Nick Thurman would be as an everyday player. You know, he had some opportunities last year. At times he swung the bat very well, but how was he going to be if you asked him to have 200 at bats during the course of the season? And you know, I don't know that anybody is going to say he's going to hit 426 for the season, which is where he is right now. But he has. Are you surprised at all with what he's been able to do?
Well, I think he's exceeded. Not that we ever thought less of him, but we never got a total good view of him. We knew he was a great catch and throw guy. He's got our system down really good. I mean, really good. But we didn't see him play enough. And sometimes that's hard and unfair to him because it's hard to get in a rhythm. Sometimes knowing, boy, if I pull 0 for 4, I'm out tonight, you know, or I'm going to play tonight and then I got to sit on whatever I did for 3 more days. So the nice thing that maybe that's happened for him is that he knows he's a guy, and he knows that if he pulls a tough night, he's going back out there the next night, and maybe that's led to his success. But I think he's definitely exceeded our expectations. Not that we had low ones of him as much as we never saw him play every day. You know, I knew he was a great catch and throw and he's got the system down, but now watching him every day, maybe that's what he needed to be the hitter he needed to be, was to get out there every day.
If we put these numbers on last year's team right now, he would lead the team in slugging percentage. I mean, he's hitting 426. He's slugging 723. It seems like every time he hits the ball, it's going up a gap somewhere. And, you know, I don't know what's more interesting, the fact that he's got a couple of triples or that Greg Davis has one. I don't know which one of those is more surprising. But no, and he's really been awfully good. And, you know, early, you caught Evan Powell a lot because you faced a lot of left-handers early. And, of course, Evan's been down, and hopefully he'll be back soon. Mm-hmm. But now that's made Thurman go out and face left-handers as well as right-handers, and he's acquitted himself well.
No doubt. And so I'm glad for Thurman. Thurman's worked real hard to get where he's been. He sat patiently. He worked while he waited. And, I mean, that's such a key to success, man, is to work while you wait. You know, again, especially in athletics. I mean, it happens in the corporate world too. You know, people want to move up the ladder, but they stop working until they get their opportunity to move, and then they want to work again. And, you know, you're the same person you were today that you are 3 months from now when you get your opportunity. And if you can learn to work while you wait and not, you know, get disgruntled and stop working until you see you're going to have an opportunity. And the one thing Nick did, he worked a lot, man. He worked while he waited, and it's just a simple premise. You work while you wait, and then the game pays you back for the work that you did. And that's what's happening to Nick.
You've got a 5-game week coming up with your first conference road series coming up this weekend. And you know, I thought I knew a little bit about this league just by watching what was going on, and I'm discovering I don't know very much about this league at all. You know, I thought that Troy and Arkansas State might be two of the better teams in the league, and look, it's just one weekend, and at the same time, Arkansas State dropped 2 out of 3 over the weekend. You swept Troy. Obviously, Georgia Southern's going to be good. Sometimes the schedule works in your favor, and I was thinking about that yesterday. You got Troy at home. You got Arkansas State at home. You have Georgia Southern at home. The teams that you think are going to be the better teams all come to Teague-Moore Field this year.
Well, that helps us, and you know, I think what's thrown you and me a little for a loop, because we've been in the league for so long, is that you took out such stable indicators. You know, FAU, FIU, WKU, Middle Tennessee. You took out a lot of consistency. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so now what we have is kind of like, you know, we understand our plight. I mean, we lost, you know, 6 juniors to the draft. You know, we understand our plight, but I think it's going to be you're going to have to play the whole thing out. I think there's going to be a lot of up and downs, and I think it's going to be you know, a unique Sun Belt Conference, because you took a lot of indicators away that that you could kind of rely on each year, and so now we go into a different ballpark. We hope this one doesn't spook our freshmen. It's a different park. I mean, Alabama was real nice, but the park was big. You could get behind an account and challenge somebody. This ballpark's not as big. So, we got a long drive ahead of us, especially after a game in Baton Rouge. If we do play it, and haven't played a game against UNO, if we play that one. So this will be another test for us, this week, if we get to these 2 midweek games, because that puts you a 5-game week with a long trip on Thursday morning after a night game on Wednesday night on the road in Baton Rouge.
Greg Davis had a big day for you yesterday. He had the 3-run triple and the 2-run single, knocked in 5 runs yesterday alone. And, these guys who were on the ball club last year, you get to know a little bit. Greg's another guy, waited his turn. I mean, he got a few opportunities last year and kind of made the most of them, but you've put him out there and said, okay, dude, you're the guy. And what he has done is he's gotten a lot of timely hits. He's not hitting 400, but there have been a lot of times where he's come up with men in scoring position, and it's why he leads this team in RBI, and that's what you want out of your 3-hole hitter.
Oh, there's no doubt. Who cares if you a 390 hitter, but you don't do no damage and inflict no pain on somebody when it's time to do some damage. And what I like about G is, G's going to swing hard with bad intentions. And I love that with him. And he's got a great table setter up above him with Bryn and BT. If we can keep that bottom of that order having some games like we did throughout this weekend, I think G can do a lot of damage. I really do. And, we've said this before, you and I together, that batting average has only about a 60% effect on runs scored. It's your slug and your on-base percentage. And when you get those two working, and that's why last year's team was so good. It was good the year before, 43 good, and then 15 games better. When you think that, man, I don't know if you can do 15 games better off 43 season, but we did. And where that gap was, that came from controlled aggressiveness. Now, that's the place we got to get. A couple times, like in the McNeese game, I felt, guys jumped up to the plate and tried to win the ball game on a home run and swung really hard and tried to win the game right there. And we didn't slow down and collectively get a plan after ball one. Now you work the count. I'm going to bunt you over and you're going to get a timely hit. And I thought we learned from that. We talked about that a lot because in that pillow fight we had with them, we were going up there and sometimes 3 to 4 pitches, we were out of the inning already. Well, when we got in there again, that's what I like about this team. What you talk about, they're very good at taking and using. We go from that 17-inning affair to this next extra inning affair, and now all of a sudden, first guy works to get on, then all of a sudden we get the base hit to drive in the winning run, and now we don't play 17 innings with me trying to get up there and be the hero. They got together collectively and went get it done. And I thought that's what I like about this team is that the stuff you give them, they take and they learn from it, and they try to put it into play.
In that ball game, in the 11th, you got a base hit. You put in a pinch runner who happens to be a guy who runs a little bit. You moved him over, and then it'll go in the book as this sharp game winner. And sure. As a matter of fact, it was kind of a bloop, but who cares? Because it happened with 2 outs. You got the guy going on the pitch, and by the time that ball lands, jams about 20 feet from home plate. So. And once again, it was Greg Davis. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, how you get that thing done and how you have to put it together. I mean, maybe somebody hits one over the left field wall.
Sure.
And then maybe you get an infield hit, a bunt, and a bloop and win that way. And I guess that's what you're talking about when you talk about finding different ways to win.
Definitely. There's kind of just, some set standards. There's a night you're going to play good and you're going to win. There's a night you're going to play good and you're going to lose. And then on the flip side of it, there's nights you're going to play bad and lose, and there's nights you're going to play bad and win. Those are about the 4 ways things happen. But you don't want to stamp yourself, well, we need 15 runs to win because we got a bad bullpen. Boy, sport can label you, just try to get to their bullpen because their bullpen's bad. We're trying to stay away from getting too labeled, because if you can stay away from getting too labeled. Last year's team, they didn't have many labels on them. You couldn't say, go get the starters. The bullpen was good. You had to be careful. They could run the bases. They could play defense. So we didn't get labeled to where people come in with the belief that they can get you in this area, and so that's what I like, is this team's come from behind to win. They've gotten, some big leads to win. They've been in extra inning games. And even though, we didn't beat McNeese, the one good thing we got out of McNeese is that we put a lot of guys into the game under duress, a lot of guys that went through one inning that couldn't give up one run or we were going to lose. And we did that for a long time in bad weather conditions. So I was glad to see that with this team, that they went 17, and that we were swinging a pillow that night, but at least we kept swinging the pillow, and didn't just say, well, you know what, this is enough, let's go home. So that was a good sign that we got out of that, and then we moved into Alabama, and I think it helped us, and I think it helped us when we came back to have this extra inning game.
Are you okay with what you've seen out of your starting rotation?
Not really. I think we'll get better. We're fighting for consistency, because young guys are going to be up and down. So you're going to see, he plowed through UTSA, Guillory, and looked really good. Gunner looked really good against Alabama. Stony Brook, we looked pretty good. And then all of a sudden, Milhorn was one pitch away from being really good in Alabama. In the fifth inning, if he's got 2 outs, bases juiced, if he gets that out, he throws a great game. He's past the fifth, no runs given up, but maybe one, I think, on a sac fly. But a ball gets down the line on us, and out of fairness to him, they get 3 runs on one swing of the bat, and it makes his outing not look as good. So, the one thing that doesn't spook me is I didn't expect to have Austin and Baronick. And so there's no reason to be really disappointed. The good thing about it is I think they're going to get better the more they keep going out, because they're young. And then 2, we're not as spooked because we'll get you out early and get the bullpen in. We're building some depth in the bullpen, and we figured we'd have to do this anyway. Now, stuck with this type of pitching performance on last year's team, I'd be really nervous, with having Austin not the way he needed to be, and Baronick not the way he needed to be, and Booty. But the way we are right now, they've shown some good hot flashes, and then they've been kind of cool. And I think that's what young guys do. I think the more they just keep going out, I think the better they'll get.
You're going to keep the rotation the same this weekend?
Well, we don't know. Millie had a little tenderness. That's why we did take him out of the game on Saturday. If that becomes an issue going into this weekend, you'll probably see Bacon come up and take a start. And then who knows? We might rearrange it. We'll see. We'll take a look at their scouting report and see what they have, and then work from there.
Are you somebody called the show and asked this one day, and I said, you may see it. I don't think you're going to see it right away. And we were talking about when you announced that Gunner was going to move into the weekend rotation. In a perfect world, would you like to see it right, left, right, or don't you care?
I wouldn't mind seeing it right, left, right at all, personally, because it flips the window, in the middle of the series. So that is a possibility that you could see something like that. I think we're a work in progress. I think you're going to keep seeing some shifting and some nudging of this and nudging of that until we kind of, till they decide and we decide kind of together that this is the fit that we're looking for. So we don't have anything in stone. We keep telling all our pitchers, our number one pitcher is the guy that's on the mound. So if we're on a Sunday and you're pitching, you're our number one guy. If you're throwing Tuesday in the 7th inning, you're our number one guy. To stop coming to me and worrying about Friday night, who's Friday night starter, or who's a weekend, who's a conference. We do not. We got that out of their head all fall and going into the spring, getting them to understand that if you pitching Tuesday, then you're our Friday night guy. If you throwing Wednesday in the 7th inning, you're my Friday night guy. And so don't knock on my door and come talk to me about Friday night. We don't have no Friday night arm right now. What we have is we're trying to build a good pitching staff that we can be consistent with.
And it's kind of looks like you're getting there.
Well,
it's you know, and you're right. I mean, it's not going to be the same all the time.
No.
I mean, they're going to have bad nights.
Yes.
You just hope they don't have a ton of them.
No, you want them to build some consistency. It's like the guys that were in the bleachers, and every time LaCroix would hit a fly ball as a freshman, he'd say, "This guy's never going to make it." You got to be calm and take your time with freshmen. Somebody this last week or something said that, BT didn't look like the player he was last year. And you got the national cross checker from the Angels standing there, and I asked him, how do you feel about BT? He said, we got the 26th pick in the first round, and I don't think he'll be available. And you got this cat questioning BT. So, I mean, what you got to do is you got to stay the course. Can't see somebody on a Monday and then 3 weeks from now and then try to make a decision. Baseball's it's a game that you got to stay the course with. And we're going to stay the course with these freshmen. We're not going to jump ship. We signed the number 1 and number 2 best pitcher in the state of Louisiana for next year. We got the cavalry coming. Before this is over, we're going to be able to run out, I think, 3 dudes on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Right now, we're developing. And we're moving some things around until we can get to that point.
You're turning them into dudes right now.
Well, that's our goal.
All right. We are going to take this time out. Cajuns have got a very busy week coming up, but only if Mother Nature allows it. We'll talk about the 5 games coming up this week. Tony Robichaux, Cajun baseball coach, our guest on Bird's Eye View from ESPN 1420 and .com.
Handle at ESPN 1420.
Did you get my tweet?
Everywhere you are. Sports Radio ESPN 1420.
ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. Going to talk about this week in just a second. We've been talking about your lineup, and you've kind of mixed and matched a little bit, but it looks, obviously BT is settled in the number 1 spot, and you've got Davis third, and then you've got, Thurman and Robbins, and Brent Conrad's kind of been all over the lineup. You've hit him down near the bottom in the 8 spot. You've hit him a lot in the 2 spot, though.
Uh-huh.
You're good with that? You like the way he's performed there?
Yeah. Yeah. What's good about Brent is Brent can handle the bat. He knows where his barrel is. You don't get a plus runner at the top of the lineup, but you also get a guy that BT reaches, that hole's open over there, that he can pull the ball through. It opens up a hole for a lefty. So I always like a lefty in the 2 spot, because when leadoff gets on, you got a hole over there for him to hit into.
You've got 5 games scheduled this week. Unfortunately, the weather forecast looks just god-awful this week, and you may or may not get Tuesday or Wednesday in. You're scheduled to have New Orleans in tomorrow night, and I saw what their record is, and I don't really remember. It's 3-6 or something like that, whatever it is. They won, I think, 11 games last year, and one of them was at Teague Moore Field against the number 1 team in America. Mm-hmm. I love Ron Maestri. I have a ton of respect for him. I have a ton of respect for the fact that he's come out of retirement to try to get this program back on its feet.
Sure.
But you're going to play against a team who's got a coach that knows what the heck he's doing out there.
Oh, there's no doubt, and I mean, the game of baseball is a funny game. You're not going to win every game you play, so you can't pick and choose your losses. I wish you could, but you can't. And the one reason we play them is that, their state school. I respect him. He's got, he's a very good coach, and he comes from having a lot of success throughout the years of coaching a College World Series participant. And I don't think we should big league other schools, and act like we're so much better than you. We're not going to play you. I mean, it's an in-state school. They're trying to build their program back up, and they're trying to do it the right way. And I think we should give them an opportunity to play us. And I've always had that mindset. Their RPI's probably not where it needs to be and everything, and I understand all that. But at the end of the day, I respect what he's trying to do, and it's our job to win every game we play, much less who you play in or what their record is or anything. So again, we respect them. We'll see what we can get to with the weather. We do have turf. The Wednesday one's scarier because it's a dirt and grass field. But the problem we're looking at right now is that it's not a dump and go thing. Once it starts, it looks like there's no clearing till Thursday or something. So we'll see. We have no midweek games next week. And one good thing is if anything does rain out, both these teams are very close to us. we can redo these with no problem.
By the way, New Orleans is 6-10. They ran into Sam Houston over the weekend and lost all 3 games. I guess I know where your scouting report's going to come from. I'm not going to get into all of that, but no, Matt had a good weekend over the weekend. But they're 6-10. They, like I said, they only won 11 games last year, and so obviously they're better.
Well, they're going to get better every year because he works hard. He's got one of the former LSU hitters there as their hitting coach. So, I mean, they work hard. You can tell when you play against them. They're where they're supposed to be. They're playing according to a system. So I respect that. They just because of their record doesn't mean anything. They're growing, and they do want to win. So you have to be prepared when you play them, and we'll need to do that tomorrow night. I'll
say this tongue in cheek, and I'm saying it, and I'm joking and understating. You got 2 games this week. You're playing Ron Maestri on Tuesday and Roger Cador on Wednesday. Combined, they got almost as many wins as you do. And I'm saying that laughing because both of them have a bunch. I mean, 2 veteran coaches and 2 guys who know the game. But I know that the average fan said something about going to Baton Rouge. Oh, we're playing LSU this week. No, the Cajuns are at Southern on Wednesday. I'm going to guess that Toops and Sharp and Shea are scheduled to be your starters.
Yep.
And I would also guess that with the weekend coming up and a conference series, you're going to let those guys go as far as they can and then pen it after that.
Yeah, Toops will go that for sure. Sharp might catch the day where he goes 3 like Toops did on a Wednesday and then bullpen from there. But we're going to throw a lot of people in 2 days and keep building some depth. We trust the people we're throwing. We just feel that they're good arms. We just feel they need to keep getting back out there so they can keep getting better.
This weekend, it's UALR. They had an interesting weekend in that they played 3 tough, low-scoring games against South Alabama. One on Friday, 4-3, got beat 1-0, and then I want to say they got beat 2-1 or 3-1 on Sunday. They are not a team that has hit the ball very well. But they've got a new coach, they've got a new philosophy, and they got about 6 guys who can pitch. Their ERA is really high, but that's because they lost the game to Oklahoma 24-0 and threw some guys out there but they've got the guys that they have thrown have done a good job for him. Sam Taylor is a guy that you saw last year. Cameron Allen's a guy that you saw last year, and they got a couple of new arms, and they got a new guy in the bullpen. It looks like they can pitch a little bit, which is not easy to do in that ballpark.
No, and this will be the longest road trip ahead of us, and it could be after playing 2 games. So there's a lot of things here that work against us. And then you're on the road and you're in somebody else's ballpark now, and it's not the world's greatest surroundings. It's not going to be like you're at the Hoover ballpark or anything. So, it's all good because it's new things thrown at us that we have to learn how to handle. And the more you can keep throwing things at us, we talk to them all the time about like an ER doctor, you don't know what's fixing to come through that door. And I can't speak because I'm surely not an emergency room doctor, but I'm sure when you get there for the first time and you're on call and it's your gig, and they crack that door open, you don't know what's coming through that door, but you have to handle it. And what they get good at is they get good after a while. They stop worrying about what's going to come through the door, and then whatever comes through the door, I'm just going to handle it. And that's a mindset, of being in it long enough to know that you don't worry about your opponent. You just play against the game. And so that's what we're trying to teach them. They've done a good job up to this point. And we're going to try to do that this weekend, have something else come through that door and have them just go, so what? It's just another day. Let's solve the problem that's in front of us.
It looks as though, and it's very hard to tell since their new staff's only been there for 11 games, but it looks as though they got a little bit different philosophy than they did before. They're willing to play a little small ball. They actually want to build a pitching staff there, and I don't remember the last time UALR had what I would call a pitching staff. They've had a couple of really good arms, and I remember the Cleveland kid was great. But it looks like they're trying to build a pitching staff there, and it looks like a little bit of a different philosophy.
Well, I've met him at the conference meetings, and he looks like a good guy. And I think the difference maker and the philosophy is going to be it's a different style of coaching. The other coach was real, holler and screamish. This guy right here is not. So, it'd have to be they're going to play calmer. They both played in 3 very close games against a good team. So we expect them to be better. We expect them, used to, you could kind of go in there and kind of get on top of them, and maybe the coach would, lose a little bit of the control factor on them. But this guy right here is real calm, and I think they're going to play calmer. So for that reason, I think they're going to play all 9. So we're going to have to be prepared.
What the plan is coming up is the Cajuns will be at home against New Orleans tomorrow night over at Teague Moore Field. I'll have that broadcast for you beginning at 5:30. We'll be on the radio at 6 o'clock on Wednesday for the Cajuns, and Southern, weather permitting, I'll do that broadcast as well. That game will be on 96.5 KPEL FM because Wednesday is a really busy day in Cajun athletics with softball and women's basketball as well as baseball. And then this weekend up in Little Rock, 6 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, Dan McDonald will have those broadcasts, and all of them will be on 96.5 KPEL FM. Nice start so far. Good luck this weekend. Let's continue that conference record, and we might even get to talk on the radio again next Monday.
Well, we got to learn how to finish. That's the next part of this. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. So we've got to just stay the course and work for consistency. And up to this point, they're doing a good job of that.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.